This recording in progress. So, thank you all for just coming and joining to talk about what this might look like for us to create some kind of a session on grief and loss, and just in hearing you, and then personally have experienced a lot of different types of loss and grief. One of the things that was brought up, I think, multiple times, there's the loss of people, like actually physically we lose them and they are with Jesus, or a different kind of grief when they aren't with Jesus, honestly, and which is a different kind of pain. There is loss of jobs, loss of dreams, loss of expectations, loss of culture and things that, Brenda, as you were just sharing, even within your city, of things that were part of like the culture that you lose if there's floods. And there's so many different types of grief and loss. And it's I feel like a big topic to try and bite off, so to speak. And I think that's one of the things that I want to address first is, do you feel like it's too big of, and I'd love to just hear your feedback. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a few different questions. And so just kind of popcorn out, hey, here's my thought on that. Here's my thought on that. Before we start creating anything, we really need to, and actually I want to pray again before we start this process. So let's do that. Lord, thank you for, again, this space, but we ask for your discernment and your wisdom. Again, we can't heal anyone. This is a space in which you are our true healer, but we do believe that you've gifted those of us that are in the creative arts and that are listening to your voice with the capacity and ability to help and aid in this deeper healing process when there's been grief and loss. And so, Lord, we ask that your Holy Spirit would fill us with your insight as to how to honestly kind of bypass. We talk about the creative arts, like bypassing sometimes all those analytical thoughts. But would you, we don't necessarily need quick healing. Lord, you're not necessarily about quick healing, but full healing. And so show us how to get to the places where we can help people experience full healing. In Jesus' name, amen. And the Lord actually brought that up while we were just now, a reminder of, when we do a session, there's no way that you can walk out of a session. I shouldn't say there's no way to experience like full deep healing is often not immediate and quick. And like somebody was sharing before, it can be an ongoing process. So while you experience freedom and healing, 6 months from now, you come in contact with something or someone that triggers that again, and you feel grief all over again. But prayerfully, it's maybe not, it doesn't hit you quite as hard. And so I think, and then there are spaces where, Brenda, you shared, like there's breakthrough, what I would call breakthrough, not necessarily, oh, I'm never going to think about this again. You weren't saying that at all, but it's not that when you experience some healing, it's not, okay, that's done. I'm free from thinking about, grief and loss. It's just, there's some breakthroughs that the Lord allows. And so the question I would present to you is, and we're doing this with the Lord, do you feel like a session would be best for breakthrough moments? So maybe something like Brenda had shared, I did this exercise and there was something about it that just like broke some things for me. Or do you feel like it would be good for almost like a process? Like this is maybe there's 3 or 4 sessions that is kind of like part of a process in like this healing process. What are your thoughts?
I was wondering the same thing. I was wondering if a more long-term approach might be better, and so that's what was rolling through my mind. The thing that came to me as I was praying this morning is when I learned that there are 5 stages of grief. I guess now there's, some say 7. And I thought that maybe something that had 5 sections to it. But the thing is, you're not gonna you're not going to fully address all 5 of those areas, but uh, it made me wonder if, not everyone's going to be able to make a multi-session type of a situation. So it made me wonder if maybe looking at it more as the session being the beginning of a process that has homework, not or follow up that they can kind of do on their own, and that the session is just the beginning of outlining how they're gonna follow up, as they're hitting those different stages of grief. Um, and so the 5 stages are, if you go by the 5, is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I think if you came up with something that had any type of, I think it's, and I only say this because I think when people are struggling with grief and it's really heavy, like Brenda was sharing, that to say, oh, can you come up with some kind of an image that has 5 sections to it, might feel kind of overwhelming. So you could say, like, and if you feel overwhelmed by that, then here's several options, and maybe you could just pray about which of these options appeals to you, like a turtle with 5 sections on his shell looking at him from the top, or a ladder with 6 rungs so that there's 5 sections to fill in between, or maybe have like some options of 5 different areas that they could kind of fill in or work on. And I think I guess that was the thing that came to me, was the 5 sections idea, and then going back and forth about whether that's the session is just kind of the beginning process.
That's an interesting concept. And I want to, hear your thoughts on that too, but that's an interesting, what I kind of hear in that too is, something that's presented. Yeah. That's an ongoing thing, but also something that can actually continuously help them work through grief and loss.
Yeah. And I think the thing is too, that I have explored with a couple of times the idea of doing sessions remotely, and how would you do that? And I wonder if it's something that they could have, like maybe an email, follow-up emails sent to them where they can continue working on it. Because I know that we've talked about in the training the fact that if you know the questions and the reflective part too far ahead of time, then your brain can kind of race to fill in all of the blanks. And where this is a longer process, maybe it could be something that this is the in-person session is to get you started. And then, maybe down the road, if they could have like an email follow-up with like, okay, when you're ready to do the next section, you can open this and keep going with it, and have it be like a remote thing. And because that way, if they're physically able to be there from multiple sessions and they'd like to do that, then you can. But if somebody I know through Facebook or wherever, it's like, oh, I'd really love to do that, and you have to do it remotely, you can just, that's my, just, and I'm just like I'm just kind of thinking out loud about it,
I appreciate it. I think that's that's definitely one really interesting and intriguing take on how we can maybe do that. So like again, I'm writing, kind of taking these, and I'm so sorry, I'm really congested, guys, so sorry for me, but but tell me, share your thoughts. And there's no bad thought. We're in a think tank right now. So right now this is just like, hey, just pile it on.
Yeah, I've done a couple sessions. I'm sorry.
All right, no, you carry on.
You can go ahead.
I was actually just thinking, everybody's so different, and we process everything so differently as well. For me, it was a moment of breakthrough. But for some other people, it might be a much longer drawn out process. They might not be at that stage where I'm now ready to face this. And so it's very difficult to say. And sometimes I feel that a long session, well, with follow-up sessions, it might put pressure on people. They might not be in that place where I need a follow-up now.
Yeah.
So it's so, I don't know, I find it so sensitive and so difficult because I feel maybe one session to start with, but keep it simple, keep it very, very just almost, God, you do the work. And where the facilitator doesn't talk much, there's prayer, and there's their activity, and there's the art table, and there's the activity, and there's the music, whether you have candles or whatever sort of atmosphere you create, but then allow God to work with each individual, because we don't know what they're thinking and what's going on in their heart and their mind and their life, and then afterwards maybe give them space if they want extra prayer or if they want to come chat, or that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing them. I so appreciate it. Yeah.
I actually wondered about that, if it would be good to actually create two different sessions. One that was more like a breakthrough, all encompassed, and then something else that is more of like a multi-step, and then people can choose what they feel like they need, depending on their situation. Because some people are just so busy that they have trouble processing their grief, and they really don't to try and commit to doing a multi-step process would add to their feeling of overwhelm. And a person like that would probably prefer to just do one and then work through the rest of it on their own. But there are other people that are like, I could never work through this in one session, and trying to fit it in one session would feel overwhelming. And so for that person, a long-term approach might feel more accessible. So maybe it's not one, maybe it's two.
And I think one of the really important things I've found over the years is, which I have done this poorly sometimes and then sometimes well, is not basically overpromising on sessions. So, if there's like this description of, this is what we want to do. And if I'm talking about, we're going to ask the Lord for a word and it's going to give direction for your entire 2023. And what if the Lord doesn't give a word and I'm walking out disappointed, thinking like, I don't have any more direction than I thought I did. And I think that the sensitive thing when we're talking about grief and loss is that I think we've all mentioned it at different times. Everyone is at different stages and everyone is coming in at a different place. People are grieving different things. So, and rarely I have found, do we really know where we're at when we're grieving? So if you are in the stage of denial, you're not necessarily walking around going, I'm in the stage of denial in my grief process. So you don't even know where you're at. It's kind of just, grief just feels like this fog sometimes where you're just walking around going, I'm just not good. And so I think we, whatever we do, just need to be really careful that we are not, I hate to say like over-promising, because God can do miraculous things and we have to also believe for the miraculous. So there's that tension between believing, like if we're going to do what we're doing, let's believe for the miraculous and the hope that Christ can heal in a moment. Like I think somebody else mentioned it, just I just need to touch the hem of your garment, Lord, and then I can be healed. So he does heal like that. And at the same time, we don't know how Christ wants to heal people every time. And so, just throwing that into the mix. Maureen, you wanted to share something a moment ago too.
One thing that I've done a few sessions, one thing that the Lord told me is that I'm giving you this heart for people who are grieving in all different ways. But we're not going to put that in a box. We're not going to call it a grief session. We're not going to do that. That was for me. That's not like everyone's instruction. And sometimes you're not even going to mention me, because I also have an outreach, the Art of Play, where some of those people don't know Jesus yet. And it's not that I'm trying to hide him. They know he's my guy, but I'm very gentle, so let him reveal himself. One thing that I did with them was we talked about everyone wants to kind of create pretty things. Like they want to create when they feel good, they want to create when it looks good, they want to create, which we all know just isn't the case. So we did a week long online session of creative journaling, a creative kickstart. And what I did was themes for 5 days. And so there was love, joy, those feel good. And it was just process, colors, textures, and things, kind of mixed media-ish, that come to mind or that come out as you're moving through these feelings or memories or something. Then I snuck in pain, disappointment, grief. And so it was really interesting, the feedback that I got from that, because a lot of my friends online did not know either what was to come of it and they had a breakthrough, or they just didn't want to they didn't want to do it. They just didn't want to go near that. And so I did it too with them and let the spirit flow. And just some silly things like this was crushed expectations. And I just saw like a rainbow kind of gradient going around into an ugly blob of black and black splatters. And it was 5 minutes. And I told them, don't spend too much time on this. Just so basically that was just a little miniature session on like how to process these things, kind of thing. Then I did a session, like a creative worship session with 12 women. And I, again, didn't label it grief, but it was I shared a little bit about it, the metamorphosis of the rock. It was last month. And basically, to become a diamond or any stone in the earth, God will literally change carbon deposits, and through fire, deep heat, pressure, friction, and all kinds of things happening below the surface, a diamond is created. And that's a lot like us. We have to go.
It just like came out of your hand. Were you holding? Look,
I know.
It looked like it was magic. You were like, a diamond is created.
And that's how it happens, right?
Yeah.
And so for that, and I studied I think I prayed and studied for about a month and a half on this, and I just kept going back to it. And so for that session, it wasn't necessarily all for the grieving. That's what I related it to. But I just prayed that the Lord would reach people where they were, whatever muck they were walking through, whatever hard feelings. Because again, to some extent, we're all grieving something almost all the time at some level, And so what we did was simply had a canvas, and I told them to create first, pretend that blue isn't there, muck. What does their muck look like? What is the hard, ugly stuff that they're walking through or have walked through? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And I encourage them to, grab whatever colors. Maybe it's brown, black. A lot of people wanted red, the anger, rage over it. And so they were kind of able to combine, Betsy, all those stages in their backgrounds, whatever stage they were at.
Yeah.
And then, I encouraged them to get their spatulas and make texture and like literally pound it out. I was like, really get into this and feel it, like, what does it look like, what you're feeling inside? And they got into it. And we spent most of the time doing that. And then we walked through some of these scriptures and prayers about what he's going to do with it. And each of them got one of these little plastic crystals. And I promised them we were not worshiping crystals. This was not a new age workshop or anything. And they either in the middle of their canvas, they added light to it. Like I asked them to, what does his promise look like to you? What do you want to shine out of this with this? And it was just, everyone had such beautiful things, but it was all dark with light and then their little crystal. And I told them, if you want to throw this canvas away, do it. But keep this and remember who you are in his sight so that no matter what you're walking through, he's using it.
It's beautiful.
Not
I
that
really
that's
Very good.
I really love that you, because I always thinking when trying to think of these things, I always have to feel like I need to come up with like an actual image, but I love that you're using just color and texture and raw materials to process. I think that's great. And what really stood out to me was when you said you can do whatever you want with this. And it makes me wonder if that might be relevant is, you know, where how we do the reset and then you cross it out or you tear it up or you know, maybe it might be interesting to explore the idea of creating something specifically to throw away or even destroy in some sort of sense. That's the thing that kind of went through my head as you were talking.
Mhm. Carrie, were you trying to say something or if I'll,
Yeah, I don't know. I initially,
okay, you
I
don't
was
have
kind
to,
of
I
like,
just,
no,
yeah.
no, but I'm not sure what you heard. At some point, like I'm not on mute. So it's like, oh yeah, you know, I'm a responsive person. So maybe that's what you heard. But what I was just going to say more towards the beginning was I loved everything that was just shared. That was just really, really cool. Kind of my knee-jerk initial reaction to your questions was to do a first time session so that they can, what did I put down? Maybe get unstuck, you know, connect to God, get some traction, and then have an offer for an option to do more. But, you know, do something that could stand alone so that there could be some, benefit, and then have an option to do more. That was my initial reaction to your questions.
Possible.
Okay. I can't remember her name's not, I think it's Amanda Hartrich, who she works with the trafficking. One that she did that's coming to my mind right now is it was like a hot air balloon and they used tea bags to be like the weights, and part of the instruction for it was, and when you're ready, cut these off. So the art piece itself had a when you're ready, do this follow-up.
Right.
That just it came to me. That might be an interesting. Yeah, that was it.
I think there was, I did a one-on-one session with someone one time and we used like actual Band-Aids. And it was, I think we drew a heart. I actually can't remember. She drew her heart, how she felt like it was, but now I need to go back and remember it, but basically the part of the process was like, there's Band-Aids over all these things that hurt. And when she was ready, to like one at a time take off, but she did not take off the Band-Aids when she was with me. So she took it. It was something that she took home and then like actually took off a Band-Aid. And then I said, when you're ready and when you feel like those Band-Aids are off, that's when the Lord wants to like really do surgery and then come back to the studio. And we'll kind of do some repainting and on top of it. I haven't ever seen her. She hasn't come back. but to do that. And I think part of it, and I actually very much know where she's at, and there are actually just more band-aids on the heart right now. And so I think while there is ache for that, I do think there is a lot of value in letting people, if people aren't ready, they're not ready.
Yeah.
And if people aren't ready to cut those strings or to peel off the band-aids or to throw something away, it's not actually going to be healing. It's just and I don't mean to say it this like harshly towards all of us, but it kind of just makes us feel good, like we're doing something that's helping, but it maybe isn't necessarily helping if we rush people through it. And so I do personally love the idea of giving people time and space for things that are like, and when you're ready, because I think basically it's the tools. It's a physical thing that helps them go. I don't have to. We've talked about the pressure sometimes to even in just another session too. There's sometimes that pressure, and sometimes I'll tell people, you know what, if you don't want to do this part of it yet, then that's okay. Just leave it. Just leave it right where it's at. And I think there's a lot of value in that, specifically with grief and loss. So I love the idea of doing things or creating something that gives them space to not finish it, so to speak, in this session.
Yeah.
But is more like maybe an interactive or something thing that they could do. They might be ready. And then if they want to, they can do it in the middle of that session, but then it just gives space for, I think I'm going to do this next week when I'm quiet, maybe by myself. I personally, I know this is like what I teach, but I don't do group very well. And so if I am wrestling through something with Jesus, I need it to be like in a quiet little hole where no one else is around. And so something came up. Forgive me because I don't remember who said, I think Maureen, I think you shared it, that intrigued me. Creative journaling. And interestingly, I felt like yesterday morning, I just bought this huge stack of journals, like blank journals, and I don't have any, I don't know why, but I just did. And I felt like the Lord I felt like he has plans for them, and that there's a purpose for it. So I'm intrigued because as you said something about creative journaling and one of the things you were doing, I wonder if that might be a good medium where it begins as a creative journal, or the session is like they create one thing or one page, or it's just one thing and they walk away with a journal, and maybe there's prompts, or maybe that's something that they could continue. That is something that could be just a one-time thing. Or it could be just a safe space to continue in this process. So what are all of y'all's thoughts on, and I'm not offended if you're like, no, what are your thoughts on starting with like, maybe having it be a creative journal that we work on?
Love it.
Brilliant idea. Love it. Excellent. Yeah.
I want to make sure, and Dolores, I want to hear you too, like just kind of that everyone, because I want to make sure we're all kind of going in the same direction, but.
Yeah, I like the idea. I'm a big journal and prayer journal kind of person, and putting it in words. So I like that idea a lot.
Okay. Well,
And it makes me feel, Ashley, it makes me feel like you just did a really superb job of kind of listening to all of us and taking all of that. And then like, yeah, it was a really good solution to, like, you listened really well. And I think that you heard what was being said. And then what you've presented is like, yeah. So that's cool.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
You're always
Yeah.
the
Ashley, have you ever seen the book Praying in Color?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. Why don't I know about this book?
I'll show it to you. Well, you can look it up, but I have a couple of them.
Right?
Yeah. You might want to look at that and kind of maybe incorporate some of that into what you're thinking.
Yes, if it's anything to do with in color, I
Yeah.
I love using color specifically. I mean, you guys all know you've seen gone through the whatever. But oh, that makes me excited to like have a new okay. Well, and kind of in the same idea of we're not going to, like with grief, it's not necessarily all going to be tied up with a bow in the same way in a Zoom session. I know we might not get all of it done, but I do have some ideas as far as how we can walk forward. I like the idea of doing a creative journal specifically and having that be a standalone thing that if somebody just shows up one time, they can do it, they can walk away with it. But then creating some things that, and I think we could talk about one, let's talk about what that first session could look like. What would the goal be of that first session? I think would be a good way to do that. And then the follow-up would be, honestly, I think that would probably be a separate meeting, but I'm going to present some ideas to think about that we can that I'm going to actually ask some other, it's popping on. So I think that, hey friend. Good morning.
Good morning.
We are, just a kind of in a brief, we've just been talking about walking forward and doing a creative journal. I'll let you kind of catch up with the first half of what we were doing in a little bit, but just so that you know where we're headed right now. So, I think we can talk about what that first session would look like, what the goal would be in beginning a creative journal, whether it's, hey, let's do the front cover. And I think it would be good to, or maybe the first page. And then in a follow-up Zoom meeting, or we can just even do an email chain. That's fine too, whatever works, of what are some different prompts and ways we could continue that. I might even ask each one of you, I probably will do that. I'm probably going to ask people to like input, what are some good prompts that you think would be really helpful as part of this creative journal, some things we'll get there. But let's start with, in this first session where they're going to be given a journal, what is I say practical, but realistic goal in doing a one-time session? A goal might be, fill in the blank of some ideas of what could a goal be for a one-time session, creative session.
I love the idea of the cover.
Okay. Okay, so doing a cover.
Yeah. In some way.
What do you think? I want you to think for a minute. So all of you think for a minute, if you were, and I know this is so broad, but if you were in your place of like grieving or loss, if you walked into a session, you knew you were going to be doing a creative journal, you know it was going to be on grief and loss, what would you want to initially begin doing and working on? Or what might you expect to begin doing?
One thing that I have found in creative worship sessions or in the creative playground that I have, the art of play, all of that, is that for me, it's second nature to express myself in a visual way and to get that out and to be okay with ugliness and processing. And a lot of people don't know how to do it. They don't know what I'm talking about. It's like I'm speaking another language, a really hard one, German or Mandarin, specifically. And so one thing that I developed and want to incorporate into beginning that creative prayer journaling, if you will, and that I do with art journaling, is I made this, and I don't expect this. I showed it to you. We had a Zoom meeting, Ashley, back in the fall. The Beginner's Guide to Creative Self-Expression. And it goes through how I kind of process my feelings and thoughts into visuals. Like, what color are you feeling? And kind of the psychology of color, if you will, what different colors are associated with this or that. Different textures, different mark making. It's more geared toward mixed media, but just different things to put down on the page and break that blank. Oh, I can't talk. Break that blank page, if you will, because that blank page is super overwhelming sometimes, and we just need to get something out and what that looks like. And so I am more, I don't charge participants for this. I made it and it's a PDF. So I'm willing to share this if you either want to use it or if you want to take parts of it and make them your own or whatever. That's where I personally start after having just witnessed people not able to do this. It's like they want to, they like the idea of it, but it's too overwhelming and it triggers all kinds of extra bad stuff. And then they get really overwhelmed and, cry.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for offering that. And absolutely, I'm going to say yes. We would all love to use that as, so thank you for putting it in the collaborative pot. And so that we can, I think at the very, I was going to say the very least, not the least, but I see how that could be really helpful just in prompts and different things throughout the process too, whether it's the beginning or through prompts. But no, I thank you so much. I appreciate it. What are y'all's thoughts on the cover versus beginning, like in the middle of the pages? I see pros and cons of both. When I've done journaling before, we usually start with the cover. But it's been more about the Lord speaking into, well, we pray and ask the Lord, what is this journal going to be about, and what is it going to be for, and what do you want to do through this journal? And so it's a little bit more about waiting on the Lord. I think because this topic is a little bit different, I can see pros and cons to it being the cover versus doing, like, just starting with some different prompts or things like that. Like I have thoughts about both. One's not necessarily stronger than the other. So what are your thoughts?
I think, Ashley, no, I appreciate that kind of resonated, although I don't have a strong opinion either way also. But if we're talking about people coming in the middle of grief, and like the one lady, I'm sorry, I forget your name, but you talked about just being like disoriented, and yeah, I'm thinking the cover may wait, that we want to get, because you don't know what that's going to be yet, that you'd want to start processing. And I wondered also about the first session just being what grief feels and looks like. So it's all in there so you can get it out somehow. But I think that's interesting. Yeah, that you suggested maybe not the cover to start with. And that's what I'm thinking. If I'm coming in and I'm overwhelmed with my grief and I just need a release, I don't understand it, I need a way to, so that would maybe be what I would want first, is a way to just get it out. But I'm not sure that you could, I don't know about the healthiness of leaving somebody in that place when they walk back out the door.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe, so it's almost like that would have to be followed up with, I don't know, what would it feel or look like to have God with you there, or how is God experiencing your grief? Or there may need to be a connection. Like, it couldn't be just that. I don't know.
Carrie, I think it's important that we never just, it's good and important to let people express themselves and to let people to be, but we have to be careful about, yes, not just leaving people without hope at the same time. I think that's extremely important.
Can I say something? Could we not?
It's hard to hear her.
Yeah,
sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Let me turn my volume. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it possible to do a sort of some type of journaling with collaging, with a collage? Because then you could add photos. They could bring photos of loved ones. You can do a bird being set free, or as well as writing out something of what is on your heart. Maybe it's a letter to your loved one, or I mean, I know they can't hear or see you, you know, you don't want to be freaky, but maybe just something that's on their heart. I don't know, just a thought. So you've got a little bit of writing on your canvas as well as collage. That way you're not putting too much onto them, but you're giving them that freedom to express themselves in whichever way that they feel. So it's a little bit more, it's not too set out for them.
I actually
Just a
really,
thought.
I really like that. I have a friend who lost her husband and came into the studio a couple weeks after he passed, and she wanted to collage. That's actually all she wanted to do. And it wasn't even of him. It was just, she just kind of cut out different, she just wanted to put things together. And at the end, she wanted the sunshine on there. And I think it was, I could see she was at the very beginning stages of deep grief. And so she was still at that place where she's like, I want it to be good. I want it to be good. And she had, you know what I mean? So the expression of, forgive me, the expression of like the sunshine, I think was also the longing that we all have when we're in grief, of like expressing where you're at, but I just want the sunshine. I just want it to feel good again. And so I do think collaging gives the space to maybe share a little bit of both of that, of like both what I kind of want or what I miss and what I lost. And Betsy, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I just, as you're all talking, what was coming to my mind was the session that I did for my pastors, which was journey. And I was thinking, you know, if it were me, if I like lost my husband or was in really, really deep grief, how would I personally want to start? And for me, I think I would always want to acknowledge where I am, but also ask God to give me some sort of a word or a promise or a vision that he's going to lead me through this, and to give me a sense of, to acknowledge where I am, but also give me a sense of hope that, you know, he's going to walk me through this. And then that session journey came to me because the creative prompt was, first they did a warm up of just painting a cardstock paper. And then the question was for the, which wouldn't, obviously this is grief, but for them, it was like, you know, what aspect of your journey does the Lord want to speak to you about today, as a father, as a pastor, as a, you know, whatever. But then the next prompt was, if where you are was a physical location, what would that location be? And it doesn't have to be someplace that you could actually physically live. It could be in a bubble, it could be under the water, but just something to represent physically where you are. And that probably is going to be a very dark, you know, type of a place. And then later it's the next, you know, and then they painted that. And then it was, and what is the tool that I said vehicle, but it could be a tool, that God is going to use to lead you out of this place, through this place. And so like for one of them, he was overlooking a valley and it was a walking stick. For somebody else, they were at the beach and there was a lighthouse, and he did like a motorcycle with a sidecar because they had just had a baby. So everybody had something different. Somebody had a truck, somebody whatever, that they added in. But I just really like the idea of what is a physical place, and then it's something that you could either have them say, you know, when you're ready, you can go back and add in light if it's a dark thing, or you could do the exact thing, but looking for some sort of promise from the Lord of how he's going to lead you through it. But I felt like if you looking for, and then it's a moment too, potentially for the Holy Spirit to give them some sort of a prophetic promise that down the road as they're going through it, he can kind of go back to like, remember I said this to you at the beginning, see, I am with you, I am leading you through it, you know.
You know what? Gosh.
That's my thought. I actually have to exit. So I'll be continuing to pray for you, and I'll check back later about how, you know, where you guys were and what your decisions were.
And I'll probably send out an email for sure to those on this call and probably some other people that want to be a part of this process. So I'm not going to promise you when I'm going to do that because
That's okay. But I like the idea, just before I go, I do like the idea of the cover being the start. And then I think that a lot of the other things that people are bringing up and suggesting could be worked into reflective questions and creative prompts, you know, and you could even towards much further in, you could continue to, especially if you don't have them seal it or Mod Podge it, have them go back and modify the cover in different ways as part of a creative prompt. And so if you were to approach that that way, then it would help to have them at least be starting the cover at the beginning, and because then they can always go back to it multiple times after. Anyway.
Yeah.
You ladies are all awesome.
Thank you, Betsy.
Love you all. I'm not sure how do I get out of here. I gotta figure it out. It might take me a minute, but
Great.
peace
I'll
out.
just-
We're check on my husband who's got COVID.
Okay, go check on him.
I have a thought to two things. One about the cover.
Okay.
I just pulled out all my art journals. I've been art journaling since 2017 as a practice. I've never done a cover. It's overwhelming to me to put it like a finality on it. That's just me, because I'm not everybody. But that just even after all this time, I've never done it.
Yeah.
So for me, I can't ask anyone else to, but only because I have never. Two, there was a question about collage and incorporating. I am big on play. I do mixed media. I can draw. I don't enjoy it, so I don't. I like color and backgrounds and collaging and all kinds of writing and marks and textures. And so absolutely, yes. Like this has all of the above. You can't see it, it's on Blur, but there's collaging. It's kind of like as it comes, get it out. Like, right, I have what I call art ADHD, not to diminish actual ADHD. I get very excited and like I change my mood and I just change direction, and I like to, let me do this now, let me do this, let me paint, let me color, let me make marks and glue things down. And it's amazing how beautiful all of that mess can be. And so that kind of is where that's how I teach the journaling thing with writing and stuff, and in different directions, like practicing this and that. But yes, you can do anything in a journal.
Go for it. I see your little hand going.
Okay. So I apologize for jumping on late because I'm in Easter Standard Time and my brain did the wrong calculation. So
I figured
apologize for that.
It's okay.
Your
name.
Say it again.
Say your name so that.
Oh, a need for something. So a need. So I lost my daughter in 2011. So my counselor had me do a journal, and my journal was a letter to my daughter. It's like what, like each day, that was how she had me do my counseling. So it wasn't, she's like, it was a way to talk to her in a way. So my journal, I didn't do anything on the outside, but what she did for me is she brought me a few of them and they had different patterns on them. So then I was able to choose one that I felt would relate. She knew I liked butterflies and butterflies, so it was one. And now that I think about it, had I had the opportunity, that's probably what I would have created, which would be one with butterflies on the outside. So my journal, the goal of my journal, so we were talking about like what's the goal of it. So it's like it may be like these are, this is the way to write to your loved one. This is a way to express your feelings, to to talk to them in a way, but to write it out, because sometimes something with writing it out, was very helpful for me in my grief. And it's just like, and it was 1 or 2 lines, hey, I'm thinking this, that, and the other. So I think sometimes too, maybe it's like when we come with the people to the idea of journaling, we don't have to, not letting them know it doesn't have to be this long out, written out expression. Sometimes like this journal, you can write in it, you can collage in it. That's, how to, it can be a memory to commemorate the memory, and this is outside of journaling. But one thing we did with her, what she did with me is she took a circle plastic thing, I don't even know what's about, like 1 inch deep, and we did like a memorial stone for my daughter. So then she got the cement, and then we stamped out, her name was Skylar. So I said, put Skylar forever in our hearts. And then we stamped that in. And then we got like these, there were stones, like heart-shaped stones and stuff like that. And we set it into the cement. So we also did that. And then we saved it, and it was like something I can put in the garden. So I know that's outside of journaling, but as we were talking about that kind of came to my mind, but it's still something creative, and it's like in memory of, and then they also have something,
No, I I love that, because the truth is that even if it's not for this session, I think we all know, whether it's personally or people that we come across that are going to continuously need just ways to express in their places of like heart and loss. And so anybody that watches this, I think that might encourage, that might just be another beautiful way to let people express themselves in the middle of not just in the middle of their pain, but I hear is honestly even a celebration of and an honoring and memorial, which is kind of that's a hard place to get to, and I can't imagine that being my daughter. And so I imagine like just even the desire to celebrate is strong as well. There's the grief, and then also like the longing to just like yeah, I love that. I think that's beautiful. I think that's honestly something I think would need to be part of a journal like this, is places where people can celebrate and honor. Or Brenda, you shared earlier, like have a funny memory. Because I think if things like a journal are only just the hard and the wrestle, that's not the fullness of grief. The fullness of grief is and loss is also being able to express, it's that joy and sorrow, right? That's like I had this funny memory pop up, or I just had this like really sweet memory. We don't want all those to be sad anymore. Like can there be a place for, today I'm really angry, and tomorrow I just want to think about this really precious moment that I had. And so I do think more and more I'm like, yeah, I think this journal is the best way to go, because it doesn't have to just be one aspect of loss, but rather the like different spaces. And what I'm kind of seeing is so if we have the the journal, I wonder if I have one of my art journals. Well, I'll get it in just a second. And oh my gosh, stupid allergies in Texas. But under the front cover, basically that being a space kind of collectively gathering some different prompts and ideas that we all have, and maybe creating a a PDF that facilitators can print out, just like that would fit in a journal that could be like kept in the journal possibly, so that they can just have it with them in the journal, but they could just choose different prompts and choose different ideas. Because some of these ideas are phenomenal. Thankfully, this is recorded so that we can go back and I can like log all the different ideas that you guys have shared along the way. One of the things that kind of stood out to me that I wrote down a while ago, Maureen, was, what does your muck look like? I really, really, really loved that. But I also kind of combined with what Betsy was saying with the journey. Really what this is this is a journey. What we're offering people is a space to go on a journey, not that has an immediate end, but a creative journal is the beginning of a journey. So you can offer people hope right away that the Lord's going to be with them on this journey. And that's what I feel like is something that can be promised. We were talking about not wanting to kind of over promise, so to speak, where someone walks out, where their heart's at, where they walk out, but we can promise the hope of the Lord and that he will be with them on this journey. That's something we can, because his word promises that. And so we can cling to those promises. And that is something that no matter what, no matter where they're at, we can promise the Lord will walk with them on this journey. And that gives us hope. And so I think that's actually one of the things that I see, no matter what we do in the very first thing, that piece is what we need to at least communicate and share, that tidbit, and then allowing the rest of this just to be a journey that they walk with some different prompts. The what does your muck look like? I was thinking, Betsy was sharing, it's interesting because you have shared a lot about just mess making and play, and Betsy was like, I see a lot of what's the word, not realistic, but like a image or an object. That was her version of, y'all kind of do that different ways, but honestly it's kind of the same thing. She's saying to have a picture of where you're at right now, and you're going, what does your muck look like? It's kind of the same thing. So I almost wonder if in this space where each one of us as facilitators are even different, we give and Brenda, you were talking about collaging. So I'm wondering if maybe it's more just suggestions of the way that everyone goes about that, whether it's you prefer to do a collage on the front with people and go at it like that, or if you prefer to like make muck and just have people like mess make on the front of it, or Betsy prefers to have that be symbolically a visual image of where they're at right now. I'm almost just kind of wondering if we write it in a way and create it in a way that gives a little bit more flexibility, because mind you, this is just 6 or 7 people. There's like 150 people that we want to share this with. And they're all doing different things. So I do think it might be good to kind of keep it a little bit more broad to let people put their own take on it, so to speak. What do you think?
I that I like, that's what I like, and it can be, it's a very prayerful thing, because I want things to be structured to the degree that people don't feel lost, because when there's so many options, people get overwhelmed. Even if the space is too big, they're overwhelmed, and if there's just too much, it can be overwhelming. And yet I don't want to put God in a box, or how they express themselves in a box. And so what I like to do is, I'll, like with the art of play, I kind of still incorporate that, because it was set up like an art buffet at first. There was collage materials, paints, acrylics, watercolors, texture pastes, like every mixed media thing that I use to layer up and build. Too much. And so I have some options there. Like, you might do this, you might do this, you might do this, and kind of get from them, what do you feel like you want to do? Not think you should do, but what's speaking to you the most, and let's go in that direction. So it can, he's constantly refining me as far as narrowing my crazy down into bite-sized pieces. But I love the idea of the options because I write too. I mean, it just depends on the day. And so like for me with the I want to do grief sessions specifically. I have to go volunteer at the elementary school, so I'm going to step out in a minute. But
Well, yeah, we actually need to wrap up pretty soon and in a second anyway. So yeah.
so I write, but I want basically these creative prayer journals to be something that we do together, that they can do on their own, that they can reach out and request a remote session, and that cover for me a multitude of different parts of a journey through any season, whether it's grief and joy and all of the things, where it kind of just has it in this chapter of this book, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, and I almost I love as you were saying that, I was just thinking it would be this is not a must, but just another idea of, you know, once a month giving people just some open space to, if you have a journal, just come and work on it at whatever stage it's on, just an hour to just come and keep working on your pages might be a good follow-up where it's not a specific session, but just space to kind of keep working. But thank you all so much. And there's definitely more to talk about and share. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and kind of type some things up based on just things that I've heard, things that we've talked about. I will probably, this is the teacher in me, so I'm going to probably try and write this out more in like curriculum form that has suggestions. So I might say, and this is going to be as a facilitator. So in the same way the facilitator handbook has like, this is the beginning part of it. And if there's blank spaces, that means we don't have thoughts here yet. This is something we all need to talk about. So I'm going to kind of put together what I feel like we've talked about so far. Then we can see where the space, like where the gaps are, and then see how you guys feel about that. If you feel like that's an accurate representation of what we have all shared just now. But if you feel like, no, she kind of missed this whole part that we were talking about, then we can address that. So I'm going to, yeah, I'll probably make just like a Word document out of it and email. So if, actually, can everyone just type their email in the chat? I know I probably have them. It's just easier if I have just this group in one spot. And then whenever I get that done, I will email that out to everyone and then just ask you to reply all with your feedback and thoughts. And then I will probably, I'm trying to think about how to include there's other people that wanted to be part of this journey. So I actually would love your thoughts on that. My thought is potentially when we're talking about different prompts is maybe inviting people to just share like what's a prompt that you would like to see if there was something like a grieving or loss creative journal. What do you think about that of a way to include other people?
Good.
Yeah. Okay. Because I think, you know, everyone might have a different perspective of something that they bring. And a prompt could be, you know, a different aspect of grief, or it could just be a different, unique way. So the more the merrier. More prompts is good. So thank you guys. Any other thoughts before we sign off?
Maybe something that prompted me, when you said come up with prompts, it just kind of dropped in, or specific points of need that would maybe trigger one of us to come up with a prompt for that.
Sure.
Like the one gal had said she was like disoriented, or I forget that, but I remember feeling that. Or what are other like specific needs? I feel lost. I don't know where God is. And that might trigger some of us to come up with a specific prompt for that need.
You know, that's a good point. I wonder if I can, Maureen, you might help me with this because I know you know how to like do stuff. But on the Facebook group to do, you can do different polls and ask questions. So that could be just that I ask 2 different questions of like, what's a need that you would have? And then what's a good prompt? And maybe we could just gather. So if I figure out how to do that, if somebody wants to help me, I think I can figure it out, but yeah,
I've never done it.
I think I've done it before. It's just been a long time. So, what would be a good, what would be 2 good questions to ask? I'm going to write those down. So how would you word that? That's what I'm trying to ask you, Carrie. How would you word what you just said? If it was in a question form to people.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure. What do you see as a specific place where people need help or a specific pain point? I'm not sure.
Okay.
I like pain point personally.
Yeah.
How about,
Um,
something along the lines of opportunity to connect God, to connect people? No, wait a minute. Never mind. That didn't come out the way I wanted it to.
It's all right.
if they have a chance to think of, if you could say one thing, if there's one thing that you could speak about or talk about or say to your friend, partner, child, husband, whoever it is, what would that be? I don't know. So maybe something like that. Yeah. Just something to trigger either that memory or that pain or something that's on their heart and on their mind. Yeah.
Got it. So many good questions that can come out of all of this. Okay. Okay, well, I think that's good. I'm gonna try to put that together. I'll try to make 2 different questions to ask the facilitators group to get their feedback on some of this as well. You guys can, as you get the email, if you'll just be willing to read through it, give me your feedback, and then we can move forward. Because eventually, again, the goal of all of this is that we corporately and collaboratively create something in print that the other facilitators can also use, that it is accessible enough that everyone can read through it and go, I can also do this with one person, a group of people. And so I'm going to try to keep it as broad as possible so that it can be used with a group of 10 or one-on-one. So it'll probably be a little bit less detailed and more so suggestion based, so that it kind of gives a broader scope of possibility. So thank you guys so much, so much. It's so funny. I've been wanting to create some kind of session for a long time, and I keep being asked that, and I just haven't felt peace until I finally felt like the Lord was like, well, that's because you always try to do everything by yourself, and that's not what the body of Christ is. And I was like, oh, that's right. Okay. Thank you, Lord, for that reminder. So I appreciate y'all's help, and it's like already it's just so much richer and fuller than it ever would have been if I just come up with something, because of all these different perspectives and thoughts and ideas. So blessings. Have an amazing day/night sleep. And I love you all, and that's it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to just finish up. For those of you who saw this recording, you heard where we're going to go with this. And so there will likely be a part 2. But for now, thank you for joining us. See ya.